Hi guys, Amy and Nay. I'm gonna read out my asylum application story to you, the one I wrote overnight, over a sleepless night before I left Russia for the final time. I'm gonna read it out on video. And here in Moldova, I made 2 more applications. I'm also gonna videotape and read them. I'm gonna document as much as I humanly can document in the situation, yeah. So, Amy and A, that's my application, printed out in English. I also have it in Moldovan, yeah. And I also tried translating it into Ukrainian, some other languages too, yeah, so I'm gonna read to you in English. Amy and A, my life story and my official asylum application statement, one of them, yeah. I'm of Ukrainian origin. My great-grandfather on my father's side was a Ukrainian, and multiple relatives on my mother's side are Ukrainians. I don't have official proof required because I don't even have my parents' birth certificates, without which I would not be able to request documents from RF, from Russian Federation archives, to get my grandfather's birth and death certificates and my great-grandfather's death certificate. So he was born in Ukraine, so his birth certificate would be in Ukrainian archives. Nor would I be able to get the documents regarding my other Ukrainian relatives. All I have is my father's witness statement about his origins, where he told me that my great-grandfather was exiled from Ukraine to RF, to the Russian Federation, by force around 1905 because he allegedly took part in riots. But my father's last name is Ukrainian. I desperately depend on proving my Ukrainian origin because I am being tortured and killed in Russia, have been since I was born. I was first threatened when I was in my mother's gut, and my life has been the terriblest of hells ever since I was born, getting to some extreme point of torture and persecution now that I'm 39. This is a bad mistake that I cannot just go to Ukraine, where the blood in my veins belongs to, and where my great-grandfather came from. But instead, I am being tortured and killed in Russia, the country I got to hate with every nerve in my body, very painfully so. And nobody can protect me. I relate to the war happening at the level that my physical body and my brain are those buildings exploding, and those people murdered and injured in Ukraine, on Ukrainian territory. And I share the absolute terror, horror, accusations, resentment, contempt, and pain, and desire for justice finally being called for. I cannot further involve my father though. He's in danger already because he talked to me about his Ukrainian grandfather. My father was unwilling to do that actually, and he emphasized his mother's origin instead, and I can understand why. He's over 83 years old now, and he is threatened, simply living in the place where he lives now. I readily believe the local Russians can kill him or harm him, and I do not want to have the thought that I could have caused persecution against an 83-year-old person. They were threatening me with my father's life and or causing him harm anyway, multiple times, and I am afraid, scared, for him, for me, and for all the good people in the world who suffer unfairly. There are also plenty of groups and individuals here in the Russian Federation who have a plan and intention to get my parents' property. My father has a nice apartment in Novosibirsk city center, and my mother she has now another very nice apartment in Novosibirsk downtown. Plus she owns one more apartment in a neighboring town. Plus she owns a cottage house and private land grounds close to Novosibirsk. Both my parents have some financial savings on top. My elder sister, who is childless, estranged from the family, and she's alone by choice, has an apartment being her property, if my knowledge is correct here, plus she officially owns a big country house with land, private land, that my parents gave over to her, though she unofficially refused to accept it, but it's still in her name. It's another country house, not the same one. So my point is, there is a lot of money in the air and the criminals want it. Okay, I'm going to change the page. I'm reading this, yeah? So I don't have to waste time and pauses or create something else. I want to document what exactly I have submitted right now, yeah? The Russians in both Novosibirsk and Moscow know my family. It's recording, yeah? Yeah, I think it's recording. I'm not sure why the screen got dark. Yeah, it is recording. So the Russians in both Novosibirsk and Moscow know my family, and they are sleeping and dreaming to get that property as soon as my parents die. It is a lot of money. Everything is relative, of course, but those strangers, want my parents' property, my sister's property too, and their money very, very badly. That was one of several major reasons why I am being hunted in the first place. The elder daughter of my parents is now a US citizen, married to a US citizen. Her son being a US citizen, born in the US. They severed ties to Russia, and she doesn't even call my father anymore. No contact for a very long time. The other daughter, my elder sister, separated herself from the family as an adult when I was underage. She isn't in contact with my parents either. She doesn't even want to accept a huge country house that my parents wrote up in her name officially in the documents. So the property may be gone to the state unless I overleave my elder sister and claim that inheritance in theory. She will hardly be interested in any inheritance from my parents either, I don't think so. Basically, I am the only person who is in the way, standing between those criminals and my family's properties and money. They want to kill me or remove me by other means. I was told multiple times that it's a question of how they deprive me of that property and money, and that they might declare me insane to designate some person to take control over my parents' funds instead of me, or to do whatever else it takes. That it was a how question, not a whether question. It would be easy for them to do because I have a disability that makes me helpless. I'm going to make another video on this. Yeah, I'm going to talk about everything as much as I can humanly, yeah. So I have a disability that does make me helpless in many ways. And it allows them to cause me intense physical and mental pain and harm. This disability enables them to commit physical and other crimes over the defenseless me. And they want to kill me because I'm a living victim, witness, and evidence of their crimes. And I'm the proof of those crimes. They're desperate to hide what they did to me. and they prefer me dead or destroyed and incapacitated. They said openly multiple times in Russia that if I'm gone to other countries and complain again, I might be dangerous to them, I might get dangerous to them. And that they were intending to lie blatantly about who I was and what they did to me, to pretend and to do propaganda and brainwash against me, to make foreigners disbelieve me, hate me, consider me for some bad character person, a drug addict or an alcoholic. I never used drugs in my life. I never had any problems with alcohol ever, yeah. Haven't touched anything with alcohol in it for several years now. And definitely never had that problem. Okay, I'm gonna change the page so I can continue reading my story, yeah? Page 3 now. There are multiple. So, in fact, right now, it's recording, yeah, I think it is. So, in fact, right now, some of them, including Moscow police, are busy compiling false evidence against me because they all know I am packed to leave this hell and demons country of Russia for the final time, and nobody will drag me back there. Not this time. Not as long as I breathe, and hopefully the foreigners will have the decency of never returning my body to the Russian Federation after I'm dead, knowing what was done to me in the Russian Federation and how I was the victim of multiple crimes in the Russian Federation, undergoing torture, physical torture, mental torture, social torture, rape, sexual torture, beatings, human trafficking, other physical and mental harm, extreme harassment, and organized group persecution of the one single me by what seemed to be the most of their nation. 9 people in every 10. I'm speaking about torture and persecution, physical torture and persecution. Not talking about mental and social torture, though. That was constant. That was constant. All types of it, yeah. So I'm speaking about torture and persecution coming from both Russians and immigrants to Russia of very different demographics, both sexes, different age groups, affiliations, proximity, or involvement in government structures or police. Basically about most of them as a society. That's scary. I'm not just running from specific organizers of those crimes. I'm running from their nation as a whole. I'm not a Nazi. I have made that mistake in the past, admittedly, very understandably so. But I know better now, having told myself that evil has no national boundaries. It's just evil. But then there is the statistics. And statistics don't lie. If 9 people in 10 want you dead, suffering, or gone from their country, then you're very likely to generalize and say you'd better stay away from all of them. Even if person number 10 may be a good and decent person. And I do remember some exceptions, a few people who are decent and who help me genuinely, sincerely, despite them being Russians, though I can use the fingers of my 2 hands to count them. It's like when somebody offers you milk with arsenic in it. You don't say it's bad arsenic. You say it's bad milk. And you're right to say that. Because arsenic is all over that milk. So even if it is diluted, it will still kill you if you continue drinking it. And I cannot have no arsenic no more. Right now, I'm waiting for one certificate when I was writing this in Russia, yeah? I'm reading this. So right now, I'm waiting for one certificate when I'm writing this letter. It's a certificate of no legal impediment to marriage, stating that I have never been married on the territory of Russia. I ordered it because it's my last chance to get it. Because I'm leaving Russia for the final time now. And I will not be willing to be in any contact with any Russian services or consulates at any time, except after my parents die and I need to claim the inheritance. Then I hope to hire a foreign lawyer to do everything for me without my participation. And I will be prepared to actually travel out of the country I'll be residing in, so that the Russians would not immediately know where I am. It's naive, of course, to assume that they won't know my whereabouts, but I would want to absolutely minimize any exposure to any of them. So I did hear them call and asked to maximally delay the issue of that marriage certificate. The man calling, spoiler, they did issue it within a reasonable time limit, yeah, but the phone call actually was, yeah, they know the contents of what they wrote. So they did issue it on time, not without adventure, not without some very emotionally difficult context, yeah, but they did issue it. But the call was there, yeah, it was before I wrote this. They know these contents, yeah. So that's why they issued it, maybe. Well, I presume, yeah. So I will continue reading. So I did hear them call and ask to maximally delay the issue of this marriage certificate. The man calling did specify that I was, quotation, in a hurry, quotation marks, to leave. So maybe they shouldn't be in a hurry to give me the document. And I'm stuck waiting. Because despite them saying, quoting the essence, that I'm an old and ugly whore who nobody would ever marry and who is probably sick with terrible diseases and who hasn't finished waiting to fuck. Sorry guys, that's a quote, yeah? That's a quote. Who hasn't finished wanting to fuck. Despite all of them having been fucking me for the duration of my life, and so on and so forth, yeah. Despite all that, I'm a decent person. And basically a saint who has every right to find a life partner and to be happy. And who doesn't want to depend on those criminals in any way to get some document. I'm young, I'm beautiful, and on this positive moment, I'm gonna switch a page again. Yeah, page 4 now. So yeah, despite what they say here in Moldova now as I'm reading this, yeah, they also call me various bad things, yeah. The same ones, basically, yeah, similar ones. So despite what the Russians are saying, yeah, like those who were abusing me, yeah, despite all of them, yeah. I'm young, I'm beautiful, and even if I were 90, I would still be young and beautiful. And I'm an honest, decent, normal person who was the victim of their crimes. They beat me on the head, and I think I had a concussion because I suffered some very bad, extreme headaches and ill physical state after that. And after the other types of physical torture that they exposed me to. Spoiler, they made me, I was told by witnesses that they made me eat out of a garbage dumpster on the street, yeah, like this disgusting, rotting garbage dumpster, yeah, they made me eat out of it for fun. I will explain the missing part later in different videos, yeah. They also pushed food into my throat, not food, but some disgusting allergens, some trashy things that are supposed to, as they were saying, to give me some pregnant belly or like to deform my body, to make me ugly, yeah. They were pushing them by force in my throat, yeah. like this Chinese torture, whatever torture, like when they feed you in quotation marks, until the person's intestines, like the digestive system explodes, breaks apart anatomically. You guys are familiar with this torture type probably, so they tortured me in varying ways. I will talk about this in separate videos too, but now I'll continue reading. So, like I said, my days here are very long days, and my nights here are very long nights. But I do wait for that certificate, because it's a question of principle for me to get it. I'm packed, prepared to leave as soon as I have the document. But I cannot spend months trying to get the Ukrainian ancestry documents. As one thing, I fear for my father. As another thing, they will kill me long before I stand to get the first of those documents in chain. If I were to proceed, that would require me to stay in Russia for up to 3 months more or longer, waiting for each of those records in turn. And they'd call and ask to make it long, same as they did with the marriage certificate, to kill me here and to make sure the truth about their crimes against me doesn't ever surface. Actually, today, while as I was writing this in Russia, I got a call from Moscow police who were asking me if I was interested to be hired by them. That's brilliant, actually, I recorded the call, and I can play the recording to those interested. Maybe I will put it online, actually. It's very funny. It was the day before I was planning to leave. They knew about it. They acted it perfectly, guys. That was brilliant, really, So I can play the recording to those interested. I'm not hiding the fact that when I returned to Russia on April 1st, the Fool's Day, people, April 1st, I was debrained. I know I did not have anything inside my skull on that day. It was the Fool's Day, April 1st, 2026. So when I returned to Russia on April 1st, 2026, the one but last time I was forced to return to this hell country, I was very intensely looking for a job, and I applied everywhere because I needed money to sponsor myself. And I did not ignore the adverts for tourist police translator or other police jobs because I had no separate fear of police then. I did not care. They were just some segment of a much bigger segment of criminals that were harming me and destroying me through their actions and or through their deliberate and informed choices of inaction, despite knowing I was being tortured and gladly exposing me to crimes. They were all the same for me, and their jobs were all the same. I needed a job, and I applied to very multiple and very different jobs, ranging from a dishwasher to police. I could apply for an astronaut if there were adverts for that. And people, spoiler, the worst thing in this life, is when you're forced to work for somebody you believe are criminals, I would not be able to find a job in Russia. Because cleaning toilets seems to be much more meaningful and useful than I would want it to be if I had to do it for them, Or for local guys in Moldova now, who are torturing me here, For any of criminals. I never wanted to work for any criminals anywhere. And that makes job search really difficult, You have the reverse motivation going 100%. Just cannot find the job that would be useless enough for you to do it, Okay, but I'm gonna go on reading this, now. So, now, as I was writing this in Russia, so now 3 months later and days before, as they all knew I was about to leave and ask foreigners for help, a woman calls me, introducing herself as police, and asks me if I still want a job with them. It's recording, yeah, it is. So that woman calls me, introduces herself from the police, and she asks me if I still want a job with them. I actually did talk to her, having recorded the whole conversation, having commented that my resume was sent 3 months before that call. and they had bad vision, disqualifying me. As soon as she thought that I hung up, she started saying to somebody in some very excited, changed, very happy sounding voice, "Well, and now we will, yeah?" And then I automatically, accidentally pressed the button breaking off the call. And I hung up automatically, and I just cursed myself as soon as I did it, because I wish I could hear and record the continuation of that. Like, I just so wish, yeah. But I'm sure that they did two recording, yeah, and they'll play that conversation to somebody when I asked for help. But I'm sure they will either modify it to fake something or cut out a part of it to make it for some fake smear that they will try to porn me. I have the whole that original recording. And while this is a true fact that I have sent them my resume 3 months ago, I also sent my resume for the jobs of a dishwasher, a cook, what? Not really. Okay, and I'm going to turn the page again so I can continue reading. The next page, yeah, it's page 5. By no means can that fact be interpreted as support of local government or police structures. I would be very much leaning toward doing a very, very different kind of activity if I ever got that job. They would have been suicidal to hire me. That's where I will start telling my complete story as briefly as I can. But before I proceed to telling you about my existence from the point they threatened me when I was in my mother's cot to the point where I'm being beaten on the head and physically tortured now as a 39-year-old, I need to tell you a very important story for me. My uncle's story. Finally, online sounding. Listen, people. My uncle Gennady's murder by Russian police and services. My uncle's name is Gennady Ilkevich. I want the whole Russian public and the Russian police learn his name, not to forget. Somebody once told me not to forgive and not to forget. And forgiveness is a totally irrelevant thing. I will never forgive anything. What does that word even mean? Really? What would it mean to forgive? The word and the concept in it are ridiculous to me. And I have a very, very good memory. That'll last longer than my existence. My uncle was born with an anatomic brain disorder of extreme extent. My grandparents on my mother's side were both heavily drunk when my grandmother on my mother's side got pregnant. The intoxication probably caused their son, my uncle, Gennady, to be born with extreme and incurable mental disability that was physical, because his physical brain was badly and irreparably injured. He was a disabled person since birth. By account of my mother, his sister, he could look at the clock as an adult already, but he would not be able to tell you what the time was. He was a very hard-working person, though, and he was very willing to help absolutely anyone. He did physically hard, exhausting jobs for anyone who'd ask him. The Russian police accused him of having murdered somebody. My uncle had no lawyer and no fair process. The policeman who accused him confiscated my uncle's apartment, property. That was my uncle's property. It was the same policeman who accused him. Neither my grandmother, who was then alive, nor my mother were given that apartment as property, but it went to that specific policeman instead, who was interested by that money to put my uncle in the worst jail they could find. far away from where my grandmother lived, and far away from yet another city where my mother lived. The fact that my uncle had an extensive, extreme brain damage, anatomic brain damage that was anatomic, that was since his birth, that he was basically completely helpless and unable for any self-defense, did not prevent the Russian police and the Russian judges, so-called judges, so-called police, from alleging him guilty of murder of first degree, confiscating his apartment, which was his property, and giving it over to that same policeman, making it his property, quotation marks, and putting my uncle in a terrible jail in the middle of nowhere where TB was epidemic. There was an epidemic of tuberculosis in the jail. Then the prison staff of that jail made my uncle Gennady do the worst job there that nobody else wanted. They made him clean the prison showers on an everyday basis, which was the environment with moisture to get infected with raging tuberculosis. My uncle was physically exhausted. He was starved and he was exposed to tuberculosis, to TB, in moisture and water vapors, as he was cleaning out that dirt, their dirt. He got infected and he died terribly and painfully without having access to normal anti-TB medication or to any resources at all. They murdered my uncle. Years later, after I was an adult applying for asylum in Brazil, a Russian speaker said, quoting, quotation marks, "Oh, they didn't kill her uncle. He died of tuberculosis, but she used the Russian word sdokh, which is a badly derogative, humiliating word for died, that one can use for a hated dog, maybe, or for some bad enemy to whom a person would wish death very badly, and whose death one would cheer." He was a Russian speaker. Years later again, after I applied for asylum in the US and spent years in terrible immigration jail there, undergoing intense physical torture that I will be delighted to tell about in every detail, if ever asked to by anyone. And after I spent about 2 years of my life there, I was scared they will kill me, the Americans that time will kill me, after all torture I endured. And after I finally got the deportation that I was begging about at that point, because I was dying, I was being killed in a concrete cell that they regularly filled, the Americans, regularly filled with corrosive chemicals, and left me there suffocating, gasping for air and enjoying watching me crying through the glass window in the door. Crying, I was crying because the chemical vapors that were that corrosive, they were extreme. And they were causing suffocation and automatic tears, simply as one of many, many types of physical torture that I endured in that prison. So after I was deported, of my own begging for it, the Americans there did say laughingly that the Russians say they will call me Genie in Russia. And indeed, when I was back in Russia, they did call me that. Not frequently, not regularly, but they did. Genie means genius in Russian, the short name for my uncle's name, who they stole from and who they murdered in torture, who was unable to ever defend himself due to the extensive anatomic brain damage he he had since birth that was irreparable and not his fault. So his short name is Gena, and his full name is Gennady. They were insulting my uncle, and they were insulting me. I was a very small child when my uncle was murdered. I do remember waking up at night when somebody called my mother, and I could hear the whole loud conversation in the corridor next to the room where I slept in. I also remember the only time I ever met my uncle that I remember.